2,000 years have passed, and the expression most frequently repeated by Jesus in the Gospels is still treated as if everyone already knows what it means. Kingdom of God. 3 words that appear more than 100 times in the Gospels that have motivated wars, divided theologians, inspired saints, and been used to justify both the liberation of the oppressed and the control of the masses. How can the same idea have generated such opposing consequences? The answer lies in the fact that this expression has never been fully understood, or perhaps it has been understood by a few and deliberately obscured for many. If you have always imagined the kingdom of God as a place in heaven reserved for after death, what you are about to discover may surprise you. Because the Gospels themselves, when read carefully, point to something far more immediate, far more radical, and far more personal. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the following. You spend your entire life searching for a key that is already in your pocket. This image may seem absurd, but it is exactly what happens when we read the Gospels without paying attention to something Jesus repeated in different ways at different times to different audiences. In Luke 17:21, when the Pharisees asked when the kingdom of God would come, he answered with a sentence that should have stopped the world. The kingdom of God is within you. Not tomorrow, not in a distant place, now, within. And if this answer was given to people who already practiced religion with discipline, what does that say about the nature of the kingdom? The scholar Marcus Borg, professor of religion and author of Jesus, A New Vision, argues that Jesus operated from a state of consciousness he called open spirit, a heightened awareness of the divine presence in everyday life, something the Hebrew prophets also experienced. It was not doctrine, it was lived experience. And that changes everything, because it transforms the kingdom from a destination into a way of seeing. Like someone putting on glasses for the first time and realizing the world was always clear, the vision was what was blurred. If the kingdom is this, then it does not need to be built out there, it needs to be recognized within. And it is precisely this shift in perception that leads us to the next question. Why has such a direct statement been so systematically ignored? There is a huge difference between a sentence that comforts and one that disturbs, and the kingdom is within you has always been one of the disturbing ones. Over the centuries, theologians have divided exactly here. Some said Jesus was speaking symbolically, adapting language to the simple people of Galilee. Others, like the German mystic Meister Eckhart in the 13th century, went further and claimed that this phrase was a literal revelation about the nature of the human soul, that there exists a direct point of contact between the human being and the divine without intermediaries. Eckhart even said that the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me, an idea so radical that parts of his teaching were condemned by the church after his death. It is no coincidence that the most interiorized visions of the kingdom have historically been the most persecuted. The Christian Gnostic tradition, recorded in texts such as the Gospel of Thomas, discovered in Nag Hammadi, Egypt in 1945, preserved sayings of Jesus that rarely appear in the canonical Gospels, and one of them is striking. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Whether authentic or not, this saying captures something that resonates with the teaching of the official Gospels. The kingdom is not given from the outside in, it emerges from the inside out. Like a seed that already carries within it the entire tree, it does not need to be convinced to grow, it only needs the right conditions. And this raises a question that goes beyond theology. Have religious institutions always provided those conditions, or have they sometimes done the opposite? In 1985, a group of scholars called the Jesus Seminar gathered more than 200 researchers in theology and history to analyze phrase by phrase what Jesus likely actually said. One of the most solid conclusions was this: the kingdom of God that Jesus preached was a deliberate inversion of the social order of his time. In the Roman world of the first century, everything functioned in rigid pyramids. Caesar at the top, then governors, priests, landowners, and at the bottom, crushed, the peasants, the sick, the indebted, the impure. Jesus took that pyramid and turned it upside down. The last will be first was not poetry, it was a manifesto, and manifestos in any era of history have consequences. Historian John Dominic Crossan, in his book, Jesus, A Revolutionary Biography, argues that Jesus practiced what he preached in concrete and provocative ways. He healed people considered untouchable, ate with tax collectors seen as traitors, spoke publicly with women in a culture that forbade it, and forgave debts in a society where debt was synonymous with slavery. Each of these acts was, in its context, as political as it was spiritual. The kingdom he proclaimed did not fit within temples or palaces. It spilled over the edges of society, into the places where the system had cast people out. And that is why his message was considered dangerous not only by the Romans, but also by the Jewish religious elite, because the kingdom of God, as Jesus taught it, left no one in control except the divine itself. Which leads us to ask, how was he able to communicate such subversive ideas without being immediately silenced? The answer lies in how he chose to speak. A mustard seed is so small it nearly disappears between your fingers, and it was precisely this that Jesus chose to describe the kingdom of God. Not a castle, not an army, not thunder descending from heaven. A tiny, almost invisible seed that grows silently until it becomes something that offers shade to birds. In the agrarian world of first-century Palestine, this image was not merely poetic, it was provocative. Because mustard, as scholars like Brandon Scott point out in Here Then the Parable, was considered an invasive plant, difficult to control, spreading beyond the boundaries of cultivated fields. Jesus did not choose the majestic cedar of Lebanon, the traditional symbol of greatness in Hebrew texts. He chose a weed. The kingdom of God, in his words, does not grow where it is convenient. It grows where no one expects it. The parable of the yeast carries an even more surprising layer. Jesus says the kingdom is like a bit of yeast that a woman hid in 3 measures of flour until it was all leavened. 3 measures equal about 22 liters of flour, an absurd amount for domestic use, enough to feed more than 100 people. But the detail that listeners at the time would immediately catch is that yeast in Jewish tradition was a symbol of impurity, so much so that during Passover it was completely removed from homes. Jesus was saying that the kingdom acts like what religion told people to throw away. This is not a comforting message, it is a symbolic overturning of the tables. The parables worked like double-sided mirrors. Those attached to certainties saw only a simple story, but those willing to question saw the reflection of something much greater. And this willingness was perhaps the most important condition of all, which leads us directly to the difference between believing in the kingdom and actually experiencing it. There is a fundamental difference between knowing that fire burns and putting your hand into the flames. You can memorize all the thermodynamics treatises in the world, but none of them replaces the direct experience of heat. Jesus seemed to understand this better than any later theologian, and that is why he almost never asked people to believe in the kingdom, but rather to enter it. The verb that appears repeatedly in the Gospels is enter, as in Matthew 5:20 and John 3:5, not subscribe, not agree, not declare. To enter implies movement, crossing over, a real change of state. The contemplative theologian Thomas Keating, founder of the centering prayer movement, spent decades arguing that early Christianity was essentially a tradition of spiritual practice, not merely doctrinal assertion, and that this dimension was gradually replaced by systems of belief as the church became institutionalized in the following centuries. What stands out is that Jesus described the kingdom using sensory and immediate language: a treasure found in a field, a wedding feast, a father running to see his son return. These are not images of doctrine. They are images of visceral joy, sudden recognition, something you feel before you can explain. The philosopher and psychologist William James, in his classic work The Varieties of Religious Experience, 1902, identified that all major spiritual traditions converge on one point. The experience of the sacred is always direct, personal, and transformative. and can never be fully captured by words or creeds. Jesus seemed to know this. Those who encountered the kingdom in his stories did not walk away with a new set of rules. They walked away different, and perhaps this is the most honest question this theme places before us. Do you know the kingdom, the way you know an address memorized in your mind, or the way you know the face of someone you love? Think of a promise that never has a date to be fulfilled. It keeps those who wait always dependent, always at the mercy of the one who made it. Over the centuries, the idea of the kingdom of God was gradually shifted from the present to a distant horizon. Something that would come after death, after the final judgment, after the end of time. But this shift did not happen all at once, and it was not accidental. The theologian Albert Schweitzer, in the early 20th century, was one of the first to map this shift with historical rigor, showing how early Christian communities expected the kingdom imminently, and how, when that immediate arrival did not materialize, theology had to reorganize itself to survive. The kingdom was pushed forward, and with it, the urgency of transformation was also postponed. Historian Elaine Pagels, professor at Princeton and author of the Gnostic Gospels, documented how early Christian communities that emphasized the kingdom as a present experience were systematically marginalized or suppressed by the church as it consolidated into an imperial institution from the 4th century onward. Keeping the kingdom in the future had a huge practical advantage. It turned faith into a currency of control. You behave now to receive later. It is a mechanism that appears in nearly all structures of power throughout human history, religious or not. But what the Gospels show, when read without this institutional layer, is a Jesus who says, "Now," with unsettling frequency. The kingdom of God is near. The kingdom of God is among you. Today salvation has come to this house. The future may be a comforting promise, but perhaps the present is the only place where the kingdom of God has never ceased to exist. And if that is true, what exactly are we waiting for? What separates Jesus from other human beings, if anything does? This question, which for centuries was treated as heresy, is now re-emerging strongly in circles of progressive theology, contemplative philosophy, and even the neuroscience of spirituality. The scholar Teilhard de Chardin, a 20th century Jesuit and paleontologist, proposed that Christ was not merely an isolated historical event, but the fullest expression of a potential that exists in all human consciousness, what he called the Omega Point, the evolutionary destiny of humanity toward union with the divine. This is not about diminishing Jesus, but about taking seriously what he himself said in John 14:12. "Whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do, and even greater works." A statement that, interestingly, rarely appears in Sunday sermons. Perhaps because it places an uncomfortable responsibility directly into the hands of the listener. The monk and writer Thomas Merton, one of the most respected spiritual voices of the 20th century, described Christ consciousness not as a religious achievement reserved for saints and mystics, but as a gradual awakening to what he called the true self, the deepest layer of the human being, where the separation between self and the divine simply disappears. This resonates with what Jesus seemed to propose when he said, "I and the Father are one," not as an exclusive declaration of unique identity, but as an invitation. Come and see what is possible when the illusion of separation falls away. The kingdom, in this sense, is not a prize for the chosen. It is a frequency available to anyone willing to quiet the noise enough to hear it. Admiring Jesus from a distance is safe and comfortable. Becoming what he exemplified is something entirely different, and perhaps that is exactly what he was asking all along. What remains now is to understand where all this culminates, and how this revolution, as silent as it is already happening within you. No great transformation in history began with noise. It began with one person, then another and another, quietly changing the way they saw the world. The abolition of slavery, the end of apartheid, the birth of modern science, all had roots in individual consciousnesses that chose to see differently before the world around them agreed. Jesus seemed to understand this dynamic deeply, and that is why the kingdom he described never depended on armies, decrees, or external revolutions. In Luke 17:20, He said with striking clarity that the kingdom does not come with outward observation. There are no spectacular signs, no fanfare, no dramatic moment to photograph. It simply happens, like dawn turning into day, without anyone being able to point to the exact second when darkness gave way to light. Psychologist Abraham Maslow, when studying people he called self-actualized, those who lived with a deep sense of purpose, presence, and connection, noticed they shared something unusual, an ability to find meaning in the ordinary, to act from internal values rather than external pressures, and to influence their environment not by force, but by the quality of their presence. Without realizing it, Maslow was describing something very close to what the Gospels call the fruits of the kingdom, not spectacular miracles, but real, concrete transformations in how one lives, loves, and chooses. The kingdom does not require you to leave the world. It asks you to inhabit it in a completely different way, like someone walking the same streets as always, but with eyes that have finally learned to see. And perhaps this is the greatest revolution possible. Not the one that changes governments, but the one that changes the inner ruler, the voice within you that decides at every moment what kind of world you are creating with each choice you make.